And so as we jump into the episode, Fearing and the crew arrive in a new town, and as they're walking, they see lots of shops. Everyone's excited, and as we continue, the camera would pan to Fearing, and suddenly we would go into a flashback of her and her old comrade. And what's crazy is they would be in this exact town that they're in now. And after the wholesome flashback, the anime goes to the present, and Fearing and the rest of the crew arrive at their end. But things would go bad because Fern and Stark just had a big argument, and Stark storms out of the door. Son, the priest would be confused. He asks Fearing, wait, what just happened? She would then go and explain. Fern is upset. Stark didn't buy her a gift for her birthday. And as the camera pans to her face, she's angry, she's in a rage. Fearing would tell Fern, you was a bit too harsh on Stark. Sign the priest would hilariously also chime in. He would say, men don't remember little things like anniversaries and birthdays. Those words would trigger Fern even more. She would crash out and start to kick him. And after Sign pleads for her to stop, she eventually would. And as we go forward, Sign the priest would explain to Fern, Stark is a young guy. His emotions could run wild on the things that you say to him. He would then plead for her to go find him and make up with him. Fearing would agree. And as we move along, Fern would actually find Stark. He would be in the plaza. But surprisingly, she wouldn't know what to say to him. And as she's walking away, she would run into Sign the priest. He would be looking for actually a gift for Fern. After a little back and forth, he would ask Fern, did you find Stark? She would say, yes, I found him in the plaza. He would then read her and say, you saw him, but you couldn't talk to him, huh? He would further explain to her, you're not really mad at him. You just have a hard time communicating with somebody your same age. He would then tell her, I know you was wrong for not getting you a gift, but I think you overreacted. He would continue and say, he's not mature enough to even remember his birthday. You think he'll remember to get you a gift? Fern replies and say, but I bought him a gift for his birthday. Sign would then imply and say, did y'all buy it together? She would say, yes, we did. He would then say, well, then that moment was special to you. Fern would seemingly agree with this. Sign would go along and tell her, you should go and apologize to him and go get gifts together. And Fern would take his advice. And as we skip ahead, she would find Stark. They would have an awkward encounter. They would both try to apologize to each other before the other one says it. And eventually Stark would go first. He would explain to her how he wanted to ask her to come with him when he wanted to go look for her a gift, but he was scared to ask her because she was so angry. Fern would say, I wouldn't have been mad at all. She then apologized for him for being so harsh to him. They would eventually make up. And as the scene ends, Fearing would be on the top of the roof watching this whole thing. Sign the priest would then arrive. He would tell Fearing, oh, it looks like they've made up. After he would then get into a conversation with Fearing, he would tell her, as you get old, you start to understand relationships more. Fearing would say, relationships? What are those? She would be confused. Sign says, you're nothing more than a child yourself. And as we move on in the story, they would continue to chat. Sign the priest asks Fearing, why did Fern come ask me for advice and not you? Fearing hints at him being a priest just like Heater, so she probably feels comfortable with him. Sign would say, whoa, don't compare me to somebody so great. He would show his admiration for Heater. Fearing would say, huh? He wasn't so special to me. All he ever did was drink, lie. He was a corrupt priest. Sign would reply to her and say, well, that's not like the Heater I knew. He was always mature and a grown-up, unlike me. And as they continue their conversation, Fearing would have a flashback of Heater. But this Heater would be different. Fearing would tell him, you've gotten way older and mature. He would brush it off and say, well, I'm just getting old. It's natural. And as Fearing's giving his props on him growing, he says, I'm really not growing. I've really been having the same mindset since I was a child. He would then further say, I've been acting as an adult, but I've been faking this whole time. He would continue and tell Fearing, children need a lot of guidance and a lot of praise. He would be referring to Fern. Fearing then asks him, so who's going to praise you for acting like a child this whole time? He would then say, that's up to the goddess. I'll wait to get my praise when I get to heaven. He then would go on and say, I'll tell the goddess about you too, Fearing. I'm sure she'll praise you too. And as the wholesome scene ends, Fearing says, I'll praise you while you're down here. And she rubs his head. Suddenly the flashback would end. And ironically, she would be rubbing Sign the priest's head, just like she was rubbing Heater's. She would then tell Sign, I think you're a pretty mature adult, And as we move along, we would go to the next scene. Stark and Fern are picking a gift for her birthday. They would choose a nice bracelet. As we move on, they would be on a carriage ride moving to their next destination. Frieren spots the bracelet and said it's beautiful. She then says, "Wait, I have a ring that matches." She would find the ring, but unfortunately, when she pulls out the ring, it does some crazy magic. A dragon would appear and pick up the carriage that they're riding in. All of them try to come up with a plan. Stark would say, "Wait, why can't we just use flying magic?" She would give him the lore on why they can't. She would explain that they copy flying magic from demons, but they don't truly understand it too well. She would then say, using a magic spell on something larger than a human could only work for so long. And with this being said, they would actually come up with a plan. Frieren says, "I'll take the merchant. Fern, you take Sign." And Stark would be looking like, "Wait, who's gonna help me? What am I gonna do?" She says, "You're a warrior. Just jump off. You won't die." And just before they let off this crazy plan, Fern comes up with an idea. She says, "Wait, Frieren, how about you kill the monster, and just before the carriage drops, you make it levitate?" And as Fern's saying this, the monster that's carrying him looks to kill him. They're running out of time. Frieren is forced to do this plan. She would kill the monster effortlessly, and it would look beautiful. But the crash down would be horrible. It looks as if they would all have died from the crash, but they wouldn't. They all would actually survive. And after they all would recover from the crash, they would eagerly work together to repair it. And while this is going on, Sign would recognize the bracelet on Fern's arm. She would tell him that Stark bought it for her. Stark would then tell Sign, "It took me so long to pick out the perfect one, but I'm glad that she likes it." Fern would look up and she would be surprised that he put that much thought into it. Soon thereafter, Sign would say, "I'm proud of you, boy." He would also tell them that this bracelet represents eternal love. Stark would then freak out. He says, "Wait, I didn't think of it like that. I just picked it out. I didn't know it means that." Later on, he would ask Fern, "Should I return it for something else?" She would then say, "No, you tried your best to pick this one out." And with her saying that, I think deep down she accepts this ring as like a token of their bond together. And so as the scene ends, we go to the final scene of the anime. After being in the forest for so long, the crew has fixed the carriage. They can leave in the morning. But there would be a huge problem. Frieren has lost the ring that Himmel gifted, and so she's tasked at finding it. She tells Fern that she don't really care too much about it. She loses things a lot. Fern would then say, "No, that ring means a lot to you. I know it. We should try to find it." And so after failing to find it, she would get a break. The man that was driving the carriage tells her that he has a spell that can help her find lost things. This would be a heaven sent. And as we move to the most beautiful part of the anime, Frieren would float up to the top of the forest. And as she searches for this ring, she gets a beautiful flashback of Himmel when he gave her that ring. He would bow down to his knees and he would give it to her. She would feel something beautiful, but it seems like she don't know what it is. To me, it seems like it was a love ring that he shared with her. After the beautiful moment, we get back to the present time. A flash would ring up in the middle of the forest. It would be the ring. It's so funny because this ring means eternal love, like you can't separate. And with her finding this ring, I think it then confirms that the two of them have a beautiful love that expands over a lifetime and they'll never forget. And with that being said, the anime would end.